Right. So if we go back now to specifically publishing, this will mostly happen in the academic sector or in the professional publishing sector. With schools, you cannot really customize the content because it's determined by the CAPS, the curriculum assessment guidelines by the Department of Basic Education. They decide which books get prescribed for which grades and in which subject fields. So you don't really have any room for customization there. Also, a lot of the public schools would not be able to afford something like that separate from, the normal way of doing things. Maybe private schools would have that, but it's mostly in academic and the professional publishing sectors. Right, I hope you guys can still remember what your trade, academic, and educational publishing sectors are. But with the academic sector, what's nice about this and why customized content or publishing is really applicable here is that you as a lecturer can then go and look for all the information and chapters from different sources that you need for your specific course, and then put all of that information together in your own little reader or your own mini textbook, and have it put together so that it looks like a real textbook, but it's developed, say, for example, specifically for publishing students at the University of Pretoria. We'll put our UP, logo at the back, and we know that this is something that is tailored according to your needs specifically. You can take it up from first to third year. Amazing. All right, yes, and I do know as I'm listening to this, we have thought about actually compiling something like that for the publishing studies course. Exactly for this reason, because it is so specialized and niche. We are the only university that are actually offering this course as a degree, and we have lots of information that we can actually use, and in a South African context. So it's definitely something that we are thinking about. But yes, so that is when content is packaged for a specific course or modules. You will, for example, get it for bigger courses as well, but obviously it makes more sense to do it for niche or smaller groups of, kind of areas, study areas, because you struggle to find content that is really related to your specific field and that is maybe South African specific, etc., etc. What's nice is that you as a publisher can then work closely with the module coordinators and the lecturers to determine their needs. So they would, for example, come to us, Pearson would come to us because they're quite a leader in this regard with customized content, and they do it for a lot of universities and other tertiary institutions and technicons and colleges where they actually do a lot of this. Another reason why Pearson also does this, you can go and just go and research their website, but it's also because Pearson is also a multinational. So because of this, they have content, they have a huge range of content and variety of content that they have access to, and they don't necessarily have to ask permission to use it, copyright permission from other publishers or other books. So they have a vast database of content on so many subjects, so it's easy to compile these kind of readers or specific booklets or textbooks for specific courses. But what's nice here, so you can determine the needs from the module coordinators and the lecturers, because we know what we teach, we know what we need, and we know what we would like to achieve with this publication. Students also have specific needs, so you would obviously create this so that your students can have better options as opposed to going to the library or maybe purchasing really 3 expensive textbooks. Whereas if they had one great textbook that can take them from first to third year, which is specifically related to the course and to the degree, it would save them money in the end as well than trying to buy 3 of the prescribed books and 2 of the recommended books, and they only use specific chapters from these books, and then they have to go and copy, and then obviously then you are actually I can't find the right word, but you're basically encouraging then people to go and copy textbooks and do things like that, because they know that they're not going to buy a textbook if they're only going to use 2 chapters, for example. But you also have to think about the student. So customized content can also be, because you are now doing this in a different way, your pricing can be a little bit easier. So maybe your students don't have a lot of money, and therefore you make this customized booklet that is maybe a little bit cheaper, but it actually addresses the needs more closely than an international textbook. Sometimes these things can be sold directly to the university. So if you make it specifically for that module and you produce it for that module, then you negotiate with that department and they then purchase it directly from Pearson or the publisher. The student it doesn't have to go to the closest academic bookstore where they have to go and ask for it, which is nice because then you cut out the middleman. You don't have to pay discount fees and things for bookstores from a publishing side. So it's a direct deal. You have 50 students or 100 students, they all get a textbook, which is also cool because then there are no students left out and they don't have access to it. So every student can actually get a copy. What's also nice, as I said, the branding being included. So you make it your own because it was compiled by that group of lecturers specifically for that specific course. So you can have it copyrighted and you can have the logo of the university with your own unique design and look and feel on this publication. There are always challenges and opportunities. Pricing, as I said, that can be a good and a bad thing. It can be a good thing if it's included in the course fees. For example, your publishing, when you start publishing, you already get your booklet once you start varsity and your publishing module, because your course fees already catered that or factored that in as part of your study fees. So it's great. The publisher gets their money. There's no room for, are they going to buy it? Are they not going to buy it? They are taken care of. The publishers are taken care of. The students are taken care of. To me, it kind of sounds like a win-win. But sometimes pricing can be a little bit tricky from the publisher side as well. So if you have a really niche or a small group that you need to cater for, you also have to think about the resources. If you look further down on the bulleted list, you have to look at the resource allocation. Do you have enough people and manpower, and do you have enough time to actually produce this booklet that's only going to be sold to 20 students, but it takes a certain amount of hours and pricing to do it. So you also have to work out the pricing so that you are still making a profit, as well as addressing the needs and fulfilling a need for a specific institution or person or company or whomever need it, right? So the pricing can be good and it can be bad. What's cool about this is your print runs are determined, because you are making only a certain amount of copies, creating a certain amount of copies for a specific number of students, because it's so specific and customized, which is awesome. Because then I'm rather going to go digital printing, print on demand, 50 copies, and I'm going to give this to all of my students. Just to go back to the resource allocation, that means, do you have the people that can actually do the work? Do you have the time to do this? Do you have the money to do it? So that you also have to do that before you agree to print a specific customized publication, as opposed to just doing it. You first have to work out your budget and see if there are people who are available and how much time this is actually going to require. The problem or the challenge that you can also get in, this is actually the largest or the biggest one that you really need to think about, is copyright permissions. So I know you've had the introduction to the legal aspects of publishing, but you know what copyright is and you know what copyright infringement is, etc., etc. But with the copyright permissions, sometimes if you are, for example, now not Pearson and you are using Van Schaick, but they want to use specific pieces of information that was published in one of Pearson's or Oxford University Press's textbooks, now you want to use that, but you want to use that to use it in your new customized publication. You need to ask for permission to use that. Remember, with you guys as well, you cannot plagiarize, you can't just copy and not give someone credit. And in publishing, there are specific fees that apply. It depends on the certain percentage of work that you are using and the purpose of it. So if you are reselling this or you are using this, obviously your students will be paying for this, whether it's part of their course pack or whether they have to pay an additional fee. At the end of the day, there are going to be copyright permissions, and that is where you have to factor those extra costs in. Sometimes with copyright permissions, it can be difficult to locate the original source to ask for the copyright, or it can be that it really takes a long time, or it can be that people do not want to grant you the permission, the publisher that originally published that work. So you have to think about that. But yes. So that can be a con in the sense of that can really delay the process and it can be costly. This is why this model really works for Pearson. It really works for Pearson because they, as I said in the previous slides, they have access to a vast amount of content of all over the world that they can just use because they're part of the same group. So that it just makes it easier than going outside of the group to get content. All right. It can also be that you need someone, not just that you're using work that's been published before, but it may also be like with us in publishing, that we would have to create content. We have to create new content, and obviously that would then involve a whole different kind of negotiation with the publisher in terms of contracts and stuff, because it will be new content that will be created. What's also nice about this customized publications, you can also sometimes, companies like Pearson or the publishing houses, what they do is they create additional content that can go with your specific module. So based on the content that they put together for your course pack or your reader or your textbook, you can also ask them to also include extra test banks, a set of questions, PowerPoint presentations, basically lecturer support material that they can also include for customized content, all branded, all your own thing. I would actually personally love to have that for our public.